recording, man. How you doing?
Good, good.
Haven't talked to you in a minute.
Yeah, yep. It's been a minute since the you know early days of winter last 2020.
Man, that was fun though, with
Yeah,
the snow and everything
yeah,
else.
yep. Plus
Uh,
we got a news recording right there on the spot.
yeah, I know, right? We're worldwide. We're famous, man.
Yeah, rather
Uh,
Kieran's famous, one of your previous guests.
no, yeah, he's real famous. I
Yeah,
think that man is in Hawaii right now.
really? Yeah, he's amazing history. Great guy too.
Oh, for sure. Will you do me a favor and introduce yourself?
Sure will. So my name is Philip Howard. Philip Justin Howard, if you want to get real Pacific. I am currently a physician here in the great city of New York City. I recently came, so I'm a recent transplant coming from Virginia, the Hampton Roads area. I'll say East Virginia, or you may know it as Seven Cities. I don't know if you had an opportunity to go out there, but the Seven Cities consist of Norfolk, Virginia Beach, believe Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Hampton, Newport News, and Suffolk. And it's a really great area. I mean, when you want to go down to, like I say, a nice vacation spot, or if you want to move down to a nice area, southern, but that's typically not deep south. It's a great place to live. I'm sure you have a history of southern living, so I'm speaking to somebody very familiar.
Well, I was gonna ask you, how's the fried chicken there? Because
Oh,
if
it's
it's
like,
not true Southern, how is
yeah,
it fried
I
chicken
know.
really that good?
Yeah, I know. It's a debate. It's up for debate. Same thing with barbecue. It all depends on where you're getting your food from. Because you can have a war between the eastern part of the state, the coastal variety, and then of course the western variety, which is typically mountainous areas. Virginia and North Carolina being my home state, they're very similar as far as culture. When you're talking deep South and feeling like you're in the deep South, I say South Carolina and then below.
Mm.
It's just a general feel when you're in North Carolina, Virginia. Um, that all depends too. There's different areas of those states as well. You got the coastal areas, the central and western areas. But overall, I recommend anybody who's interested in going down south, but not too deep south, Virginia or North Carolina, and keep it coastal, for the nice vacation spots.
Have you met people here in New York that will say, let's go barbecue?
No, I have not. You know why? Because, well, I mean, first of all, I've only been in New York for 4 months now. 4 interesting months because of the pandemic. So I haven't really experienced New York for in its true glory, at least the glory that I was anticipating. However, I am appreciating and getting a sense for the cultural, I guess you could say the food culture. And the reason I say, I haven't heard any mention of barbecue is because there's so much variety. So it's not to say that people don't like barbecue or haven't heard of barbecue. I just think that there's so much variety. I haven't really, encountered those people. But then again, as I was speaking, I was recollecting a time when I was in high school. I encountered some guy from New York. He was in my art class. Long story short, I had mentioned barbecue, and he didn't know what that was. He was from New York. He said what, barbecue chicken, barbecue, But when I say barbecue, you know what I mean. If I
Right.
say, I mean, when people say barbecue, they think of cookout. Some people think of cookout.
Right.
Some people
Yep.
think of barbecue flavored chicken or barbecue flavored something. But people from the South, when they say barbecue, we're gonna eat some barbecue. They think of pork barbecue. And so that's almost synonymous. But when you say, yeah, we're gonna go barbecue, obviously it's the BBQ, right? The grill piece. So it's all in context, right? And so in the South, if barbecue comes out of someone's lips, it's likely going to be referring to the pork barbecue, which is made all kinds of ways, depending on where you're coming from.
Yeah, I remember I was in the elevator one time with a group of people here in New York, and this guy is like, "Yeah, we're gonna have a barbecue tomorrow," and I'm thinking, "You mean you're gonna have a cookout or you're gonna grill tomorrow? Like what's going on?" He's like, "No, we're gonna have a barbecue," and I'm like, "I don't think you understand." And then I had to explain myself, and then everyone's like, Pablo, you're such an asshole. I'm like, well, the man had to be corrected, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. You know? Yeah, that's funny. I mean, right, right. And so, I mean, it's interesting how, you know, obviously the context is important, but, you know, I guess semantics, how it was lost over time, what took place, where did it all diverge? Obviously it definitely has a culture basis. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's very important to know where you are, who you're with, and what they know, right?
No, yeah, for sure. And obviously, I was just kind of joking around,
Yeah,
but
Justin.
yeah, but I'm just like, man, you don't say that. Okay, so you've been in New York for 4 months,
Yep.
and you say you're a physician.
Hmm.
Is that what brought you here?
Yes, this is what brought me here. So I was 2 years, 2.5 years out of training. I was working for a blood establishment and in the Hampton Roads in Norfolk, and it was one of those positions in which almost every young person, once they finish all their training, their degree or whatnot, they have a starter job, a starter position, and where they say to themselves at 3 to 5 years, this is where I really want to be. And so I wasn't looking for a job per se, but a recruiter reached out to me and said they knew a fellowship director. So, like I said, I'm board certified in pathology, and also have a subspecialty board certification in transfusion medicine. And so my fellowship director, my fellowship in transfusion medicine, when I was doing my training program, I guess they reached out to him to see if he was looking for a job, and so he, I guess, referred to me. So I found someone better. So, long story short, they offered me the spot. They told me where it was in New York City. And I accepted after interviewing and so forth. It was one of those decisions I had to scratch my head over. As far as do I really want to be in New York City in the middle of a pandemic? Or I mean, it was obviously it was in November, probably September when I actually started considering the job, but probably November, early November when I accepted it eventually. But then I had to consider: do I want to move to New York City in the middle of a pandemic? Um, I guess you could
So,
say, long story short, yes.
right, but what actually made you want to come here, right? Because
Yeah,
you hear the news all the time that New
yeah,
York City is dead,
yeah. I know. So
and
I guess what drew me is, is the kind of prestige, the job I had, or I have now. I work for one of the New York City hospitals. I'm in a higher role, more responsibilities, tied to medical school here, and so yeah, it's more prestige. So more prestige, more, I guess you could say, more money. So that kind of comes with the territory too. And I had no wife and kids at this juncture, and they needed someone. And it was kind of one of those things I just said yes to. It was one of those I guess you could say, opportunities where I really could turn it down. It was kind of better than my current position in Virginia. So why not take a better position? Even during the pandemic, they're always going to need, especially need, healthcare providers. Doesn't matter if you're in a pandemic or not, but particularly in a pandemic, there's always going to be some people that need to jump into the fire, so to speak. And so, I felt I was almost I was the best one, but I took advantage of that opportunity to be that person.
so I actually asked this to my last guest, kind of playfully here, but I'll ask you: is New York City the best city in the world?
Ooh,
I know you're only a couple months in,
yeah, yeah,
but so far, what are your
man. So yeah,
opinions
yeah.
of this city?
So, so right, all right. I guess you could say, man, if you asked me that in the beginning when I first moved, I would have probably said yes right off the bat. You know, But now I've been here 4 months, and I just have my different opinions. Without getting too political and stuff. Yeah, I don't think it's the best. It's a really great city. It's a unique city. Let's say that. It's a really neat city. There's no other city in the world like it. So it has its own charms. But like I've been exploring for the past 4 months, and I can't really compare it to any other major U.S. city and to say it's the best city in the states or the world. It's just unique. I mean, it's a melting pot. I mean, because I live in Queens currently, and it's a big old melting pot, particularly in Queens compared to the other boroughs. Because we have so much diversity, so many people to meet. So it's just a unique city. I think it's a great city. But then to say it's the best city in the world, you know, we gotta just define our metrics, right?
Is
We
it better than Virginia Beach?
gotta. Say, we got to define our metrics, because I mean, if you like coastal life, you like surfing, or you like that kind of thing. But yeah, if you, I guess you can say, if you can say the metrics for your average person is, culture, food, you know, meeting, like I said, meet new people, job opportunities, shows and so forth, and entertainment. Yes, New York City trumps Virginia Beach for sure. But if you're talking about, you know, fishing, talking about surfing, beach life, you know, kind of cheaper housing, you know, then you can say Virginia Beach. So it's all subjective. But I think you're right. It's like you said, your average person will likely say New York City is better than Virginia Beach.
No, I do think it's funny to kind of.
That's difficult, man. That's difficult.
No, for sure, for sure. I enjoy getting those type of opinions out of people. I don't know. It just shows a lot about their personality and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and what they're used to or what they want, or
yeah,
stuff like that. I don't
yeah.
know. It's funny because I have very strong opinions about places, right? So
Yeah. I
I've
know. I know.
I've yeah, yeah. I've traveled all over, and I can tell you straight up, some places suck, some places are awesome, whatever. But that's an opinion,
Yeah.
and everybody has an opinion, right?
Hmm.
You might think that Virginia Beach is good for coastal life, but I'm just like, oh, I've been there a couple of times,
Yeah.
and I don't know about all that. But
And I think that question you pose to people is, and I don't know if it's intentional, but philosophical, you know, meaning like I'm thinking of Socrates, right? What is a city, right? Right. What is the best city? How do you define city? Is it the city is defined by the progress, like technological progress,
mhm.
lifestyle, the air, what makes a great city? I mean, if you think of like great cities or the best cities, obviously New York City is technologically advanced. Same thing with Tokyo, you know, London, and all the other major cities in the world where, just because you have the pinnacle of technology there, and, it's the best city, right? So you have to define, you know, what's better, I say it's subjective. People say, "Oh, this city sucks." Like people from New York City, they'll go down to the southern states and go to any city. "Oh, this city stinks," because there's nothing to do. You know what I mean? I might meet so many people, so many, like, for example, so many white people here. So many, you know, Asian people, so many black people here. So what do
No,
you
for
want?
sure.
What do you want? If someone, if you go down to Atlanta, that's like someone from New York City is Atlanta's just as fast as New York. Traffic is just as bad. Same thing with LA, and those are, I guess, they're diametrically opposed. When it comes down to like the style of the city, and some people hate LA from New York, being from New York, and vice versa. So
Yeah, I'll raise my hand on that one. I don't like LA.
yeah, yeah,
Man, every time I go there, I just got to go to the store. They're like, all right, cool. If you want to go to the store, get on this highway and then wait in traffic for like an hour and then get off here and then you'll get at the store. And I'm just like, what? Nah, man. Nah, nah.
Do they? I mean, I haven't actually tell you. I have never been to LA. Been to San Diego. So let me ask you: is there like a tram system? Do they have a train system?
They do, but man, that thing is barely even functional.
Oh,
And I remember, now this was years ago, right? I don't know if they've changed things because they're hosting the Olympics or something like that. Um, but they had like a light rail, and that light rail would literally stop at a light. And I'm just like, no, no, this is
wow,
not how it works, right?
wow,
Like
wow! It's
public
like,
transportation should kind
yeah,
of just go.
that defeats the purpose, right?
Yeah, it was I don't know. And there was like 10 people in the whole light rail thing, and half of them were homeless. And
Oh my goodness! Wow. Now, yeah, actually, now that you mentioned light rail, actually, I'm quite impressed with the train system here in the subway here in the New York City. I was actually really impressed by the cleanliness of it. I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, but I guess it all depends. I haven't taken all the different types of trains,
yeah, yeah.
so I'm in Queens, and in the lines that run through Queens, at least, the Flushing line, the Flushing to kind of Manhattan line. That's pretty clean. and that's the one I take most often, the 7. And yeah, I was quite impressed. So the lack of people that ride the trains when I ride to work and come back sometimes. Maybe I think it's because in pandemic, that's what someone told me. And but I would hate for it to, crush my experience, my current experience. If that's the case, where it's pandemic induced. People staying at home and they're clean, no one, they're not dirtying up. But I'm quite impressed. I'm truly impressed. And I enjoy riding the train. It's really fast, gets me where I need to go. Gives me this opportunity to explore the boroughs in a quick manner.
No, yeah. When I remember when I first moved here, the first thing I did was just get in a subway and go to a random station and get
Yeah.
off and go explore. Right?
Yeah, right. And there's so many things to see and so many things to do. Like it's almost like you're in a different city in itself. Um, just because the neighborhoods are so diverse.
No, it's so funny, man. Like the MTA here, the subway, everybody has such different viewpoints, but it makes sense because you can go into a brand new station that's clean, elevators, just I don't know, looks like a normal modern age subway system. Um, and then you'll get off, right by Wall Street, and it hasn't been cleaned since like 1920, right?
Yeah,
And I'm pretty
yeah,
sure it was built after that. So I
yeah.
don't know how they managed to do that. But point is, it is large, it is effective. I don't know if there's actually a schedule, to be honest. Like it just comes, right?
Right.
It
That's
just
expectations, right? Yeah, it should come.
Yeah,
You
it
mean,
just comes unless it's the weekend and then they never come.
yeah.
Nah, it is weird. I do appreciate the subway here. I know other people who compare it to Hong Kong or even Tokyo, or my last guest was talking about Toronto. Yeah, I mean it might be cleaner, it might be more on time, it might be more technologically advanced, but I don't know. When I was in Tokyo, people were like, "We wish our system was a little bit more like New York." Like the few people that I met that had been to New York,
Really?
they actually told me that they enjoyed um, the sideshow aspect of it. In terms of you don't really know if it's coming, you don't know what to expect, you don't know. There's always something
I say,
happening,
I
right?
say that makes sense, and that actually, I appreciate that too. Like, you could be sitting on the tram, and I was waiting for it, because I know I kind of anticipated, because I know New York is notorious for that. We have random, shows, people doing backflips and whatnot, coming coming into your car, like people that you least expect. This guy
Right.
came on, I thought he was, he's about to rob everybody, but he just came. He had his little stereo, and then he was like doing backflip to some like techno music and stuff. He was an African American guy, and I was like, "What the?" I was like taking him back. I paid him a couple bucks, and then he went back to his like kind of moody mood, And so, yeah, it's really really impressive.
It's an entertainment and a trip on its of its own, right?
Right.
It's not, hey, I'm just gonna get in here and get out wherever. No, it's an adventure.
Hmm.
Now, of course, there's a lot of ugly shit that goes on, but we can
Yeah,
definitely do without that. But
yeah. You got to be careful here.
yeah, for sure. No, but to get back on track here, and I could talk about the subway all day long, man. I love the subway here. It's so broken, but it's just right.
Yeah.
Um, so you said you're a pathologist,
Hmm.
which I don't know what that is, and then you said you also do transfusion medicine, something
Yeah.
like that.
Transfusion medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, can you elaborate on all of those because
Yeah, for sure.
I'm terrible with medical stuff. Matter of fact, I don't even know how to find a doctor. I've been trying to get a physical for like a month and a half, and I don't know where to go.
Well, I mean, I would, yeah. So you seek out a either family medicine, family practice doctor, or just internal medicine doctor. They'll see you, or what you call those primary care doctors. They typically that the gateway keepers of the medicine world. Even though sometimes they don't like to be called that, they usually have a wide girth of knowledge. So they'll get you where you need to go. Now to encounter my specialty, that's not likely to happen in your lifetime. Figure that's I'm literally speaking, meaning like pathologists. they're when you think of pathologists, most people think of forensic pathology, like autopsies, investigation of deaths, and so forth. And that's actually a small, let's say 10 to 20% um, involvement. Like a general pathologist will 10% of the time will be involved in, autopsies, unless
What
they
what what
specialize
is
in.
what is actually a pathology?
So a pathology is, if you break down the word, is pathos and ology, the study of, diseases. That's what pathology is. Most medical students, when they go through medical school, they have to take a class called pathology, and they have to study like all the pathophysiology, anatomy, and all the pathological states. So like all disease states. So everything I deal with is not normal, on the daily basis. If you're thinking of like a family medicine doctor who make sure that you're screening, make sure you're preventing from getting sick, pathologists deal with all the sick cases. We deal with diagnosing the sick, dealing with the specimens lab. So when you break it down, the pathology specialty as opposed to pathology class. So like medical school students, they take the pathology class and study disease. And pathologists are actually that practicing those studies of the diseases. So when a typical medical student, once they finish medical school and they decide on the residency, they decide on pathology. They'll enter a 3 to 4 year residency in pathology, which entails doing anatomical pathology and or clinical pathology. Anatomical pathology entails forensic pathology, doing autopsy, investigation of deaths. We would do during residency surgical pathology, meaning like, in those cases where, this, for example, if you have some kind of growth that's on your kidney, the surgeon will go in, he'll take a specimen off of that kidney. Pathologist's job is to diagnose what's going on. They'll look under the microscope, and they'll tell the physician, what's going on. So I don't know if you heard the doctor's doctor, but pathologists are known as doctors mainly for those reasons. Like tissue specimens, they'll let the doctor know if it's cancerous or not. So if you can't, for example, your family member or yourself or whatnot, or your friends, if they've discovered they had a cancer, most likely a pathologist had a hand in diagnosing that on tissues or in the bloodstream. So carried on. So under anatomical umbrella, we have, say once again, forensic pathology, surgical pathology. We also have cytopathology, which looks at just cells, and then I believe that's it under anatomical umbrella. Now
And
under the clinical pathology umbrella, go ahead.
I was going to ask, you said that you can actually take, for that example, you take a growth or something out of a kidney, you put it on a slide microscope. How much of it is actually visual, right? Like how often can you actually look at it and be like, oh, yep, that's, X disease or whatever. And how much of it is it actually, hey, we have to put it in this liquid? Because in my head, everything
Yeah,
is like a test, right?
yeah,
Everything, whatever it is, you just put it on a tray and you add chemicals, and whichever
yeah.
one reacts, that's the one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Typically cancer looks ugly. I mean, like I've seen, during my residency training, I've seen enough cancers to know, hey, yeah, that's a growth. That's a cancer. Cancer's growth. But the question is what kind of cancer? Like the more we do, like the more testing we do on the tissue, like first we put on the slide, we put the chemicals on it to see what kind of cells there are, right? We got to know those cells if they look clean. Like let's say it's a cancerous growth, we got to know if the cells look okay or they look really monstrous. If they look really monstrous, they look, they have different shapes, that means it's more aggressive. And we can tell, we can grade it. We grade those cancers, and sometimes we put extra stains on those tumors to see what kind of different proteins that is actually making, because with those proteins we can see how, we could actually make a further prognosis. For example, in breast cancer, we'll look it under the microscope. If it looks real nasty, it might be we call undifferentiated, and that's a poor prognosis. We might put some extra stains on it to see if it's positive for this stain or negative for that stain, and then we'll give an additional grade. So we stratify, and we pretty much give a prognosis, to the physicians that, hey, look, it's positive for this stain. It looks undifferentiated. The likelihood of survival is blank, blank, blank. And the clinician, he works with that. We also do, and it's actually growing now because of molecular testing. Some pathologists actually just bypassing, the staining and going directly for molecular. Well, rather, let me not say that, because there's some cases of pathologists listening, because they still do they're still doing the staining and whatnot, but they're putting a lot of weight on molecular, because molecular is more or less definitive, because every cancer has a molecular signature. which is definitely more specific towards either a certain cancer type and or prognosis. So, this is that's how it is with technology, right? We're progressing towards more sophisticated methods. And so, the question is, are pathologists, do we need the microscope in the future? Because we could potentially just take this tissue and just run molecular testing on it and just have an answer. However, we still need to put some eyes on it to see what kind of what those cells look like. But that weight has really diminished over the years.
Gotcha.
So that's the anatomical pathology. So we have forensic, surgical path, and cytopathology. Now, under the clinical pathology side of things, this is kind of like my area of expertise. So you have transfusion medicine as one. Another is microbiology, clinical chemistry, and clinical hematology. Or hemopathology. This is more like the laboratory. So if you can think of anatomical as tissues or bodies or solid organs, think of clinical pathology as, the laboratory, fluids, all the specimens, urines, central spinal fluids, blood, all that stuff. That's like the laboratory. We run different tests, like all the testing that you see, like, for example, if you get a panel run by your family physician, it's most likely going to be done in a diagnostic laboratory. That diagnostic laboratory is likely run by a clinical pathologist, either depending on what department that testing is coming from. So if it's like chemistry, like if you're getting let's say your testosterone checked, your testosterone level checked, it's coming from chemistry, and there's a clinical chemist, like he's either PhD or MD, that's running a lab there. Now, the transfusion medicine department is a little different because, you're not gonna, typically, encounter us unless you need blood. Like if you come to the hospital, you need either massive transfusion or you're anemic and you need a blood transfusion. That's when you encounter me. I deal with, making sure that the transfusions are safe, right? If there's any adverse reactions, we work it up. In the lab, we actually do compatibility testing before you're transfused. There's a procedure called apheresis, which I oversee sometimes, where you actually in my specialty, I rarely see patients, only like rarely. And this is the only time I actually see patients, where we do a procedure called apheresis. Apheresis is pretty much we remove one blood component and exchange it for another, in a like continual fashion. Like I don't know if you're familiar with dialysis, but it's very similar to dialysis. Where dialysis is kind of like a functional kidney where we filter blood. With apheresis, we actually remove, like you're sitting on a machine, someone sticks a needle tubing in one arm, and then of course they have another tube in the other arm. So the principle is that it withdraws your whole blood, spins it down in a machine, takes off one component that we say is pathological. Like, for example, you may have autoimmune disease, so we'll remove your plasma that has those autoantibodies, and we'll throw it away, and we'll exchange it for like normal saline or normal proteins and whatnot, and we'll give you back your red cells and give you back your platelets. It's pretty dynamic, but it's pretty simple at the same time. So in a nutshell, apheresis just means we remove a blood component. That's all it is. So that's apheresis. And another aspect of what I do is donor services. So at one of the hospitals I oversee, we have a small donor room, and I see the donors. We make sure the donors are safe. If there's any adverse reactions, I work it up as well. So it's pretty like a narrow field of medicine, really narrow. And I guess you could say without boring you, which looks like I have,
No, I just have a million questions, but I
yeah,
didn't
I
want
know.
to stop you.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where, if I was a, GI doctor or surgeon, it'll be like, it's pretty visible, because what, those specialties do is right in front of your eyes. Like they have TV shows dedicated to that. But pathologists, they're on the darker side of medicine. You won't encounter pathologists, much. And if you do, then you may not even know it's a pathologist kind of thing, where if you watch these shows on like not Grey's Anatomy, but like House, House. I don't know if you watched the episode. I like House. I like the workup when it was on. It was like the cases were legit. The workup they were doing legit. What was not legit is that the medical team of doctors, they were doing all the workup. They were they had their private lab and doing all the workup, and those were actually the laboratory technologists doing the lab workup in real life, and the pathologists making those diagnoses. And so That's the reality of it. And so, the clinicians who are actually coming into the room saying, hey, you have this cancer, or hey, you know you had a blood transfusion and you had this reaction. Behind the scenes, there's a pathologist doing the work, and his staff are doing the work. So I definitely feel proud, of what I do, and that side of things, because it gives me a lot of opportunities to do research and discover things, that clinicians don't have. Let's say the time, most clinicians that are like seeing patients, like especially family physician or internal medicine, seeing 30 patients a day, wouldn't have time for.
No, it's funny. So many things to say, but
Yeah, go ahead, shoot away.
what about Scrubs? You ever watch Scrubs?
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, that's a funny show. I wish it was still running. I still wish it was. I mean, I know that you can't replace the actors and the actress.
Right.
I mean, because they were like, irreplaceable. However, you can try. You can, pick some new actors. I think the writers behind that show was really fun, because the reason we laughed, a lot of medical, the residents, that's probably the show they enjoy the most, even though it's the most ridiculous, because it had a little bit. You know how to say about comedy. Comedy is funny because it's real, it's realistic.
It's hitting true
It's
points.
hidden true points, right? And that's what Scrubs was. They, I remember one show, was it JD or something? I forget the
Uh-huh.
actor's name.
Uh-huh.
It was like his first couple days, in his internship, and there was like a rapid response. He needed to see the patient, something, what's happening, and he actually, he didn't want to be the first one. Like him and his colleagues, they didn't want to be the first one in the room, because the nurses and everybody will have to, they will be looking at them for guidance and instruction, and they felt that they didn't know anything. And so, like, he ran to the closet, and he found out like all his colleagues were in the closet too.
Yeah.
And that's realistic, man. Because that stuff really happens. Especially out of medical school. Like, people look at you as a doctor, and oh man, I don't know enough. You look up to your senior resident. But
No, yeah. The reason I brought up Scrubs is just because I have heard that out of all of the medical shows out there, hard to believe this, but Scrubs is actually one of the most realistic because it
yeah,
shows you all the true angles
uh huh,
and the challenges, right?
yeah,
It's
yep,
not just, hey, I'm a doctor, let's look it up in a book and we're going to solve the problem,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and they're depending on other people
Exactly. Actually,
to get stuff done.
exactly, and that's exactly it. Like the nurse, like I remember the nurse, she was telling the residents what to do, and that's very realistic. Most residents learn, from the nurses, which, especially if you're on the wards, general wards, and even if you're a surgeon, you're learning from the surgical tech, and just kind of staying afloat, until people can trust you. But yeah, it's a gruesome process. I'm 35 now, and I still feel like I don't, I know enough about medicine. It's a continual process. Medicine is changing. It's going through a lot of evolution, and so,
Oh, for sure,
who
for
knows what
sure.
the future of medicine will hold. As you know, every profession, I wouldn't say it's at risk, but every profession is kind of pushed towards a future, like of kind of forced, let's say, forced evolution or forced progression. Let's not say
Hmm.
evolution, but a forced progression due to either automation or, like I said, new discoveries
Right.
and so forth.
No, for sure, for sure. No, it's funny that you were saying also that a lot of the, more, I don't know, I hate saying client, but client facing clinicians and doctors and everything else, they don't have the time to do the research and all of the, lab
Yeah,
work that you were saying that you
yeah,
kind of do.
right.
Um, no, it just reminded me of one of my buddies who's a nurse. And I mean, he, not to get into a lot of detail, but he was just like, yo, we are so understaffed that it's dangerous.
Hmm.
Like people's lives are in danger because we're so understaffed as
Hmm.
as a nurse. And so no, it just kind of made me think of that and just kind
Yeah,
of how broken our healthcare system
yeah,
is
yeah,
overall.
yeah.
But
Shout out to the nurses. Yeah, you know, the doctors wouldn't be like respected without the nurses. Meaning, like,
right,
the nurses keep the doctors in a positive light. With the patients, and they
yep,
really do. So shout out all the nurses.
no, for sure, all medical people out there. Okay,
Yeah.
so again, not keep getting distracted here. So you were saying that there's basically a process like dialysis for the blood.
Mm-hmm.
How new is that technology? Because every time I watch like History Channel or something else like that, they're like, yeah, doctors just used to, cut people open, right? So like barbershops, right? Why do they
Mm-hmm.
have the blue and red stripes going in circles? Because they actually were kind of like doctors. Like if you had a headache, you go in there and they just make your arm bleed for like an hour, right? And then you're like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, you're good. And they
Yeah,
clean up and there's blood everywhere. And it's like, how the fuck did we survive to the year 2000, right? Like
you know,
humans are just so weird.
I mean, you would be hard pressed to say that, 200 years ago. Well, you wouldn't be hard pressed. You would actually be quite surprised. Let's say that, like 200 years ago, that we were phlebotomizing, right? We were phlebotomizing people um, to relieve them of some, let's say, spirits or whatnot, because that even took place, probably 200 years ago, where, what we call bloodletting. Let's say 200, 300 years ago. I think George Washington, the first president of the United States, they said he died because he is sanguinated due to bloodletting as a therapeutic procedure for, I don't know what he had. I think he was septic, and they kind of let his blood, because they thought it would, release the spirits and whatnot. So, what I'm trying to say, these processes of apheresis, even pathology, surgical pathology, that's not even 100 years old, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how recent is this?
So
Because one,
apheresis.
the theory of it, right? The theory of, hey, there's actually these particles in your bloodstream that we can actually, count and
Hmm.
detect and everything else. And then the second part of it is the technology, right?
Right,
Like
right.
like when was this? Who the hell said, you know what? Let's take the blood out, because who says that?
So
And then we're gonna
actually, yeah.
spin it and we're gonna take parts out. It's like, what the fuck?
So apheresis. I'm glad you said that, because it forced me to go back in my memory banks. So apheresis technology started in the like 70s and 80s, and it wasn't. It was. I guess you could say it was repurposed. It actually started as from ice cream. Ice cream making. Apheresis process to take off. I don't know all the process. You take off
Yeah.
the cream and
Yep.
whatnot, just the different layers. Because when you spin down anything, right, you centrifuge it.
Yep.
It's the centrifugal force. It creates like gravity, so you can remove components that you want. So it removes the fat layers and whatnot because it's at the top. And so they said, hey, maybe we can do this with blood. So different companies.
It's a natural connection, when you're
Yeah.
eating ice cream, you're like, man, what if we do this with blood? Like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, human beings are right. It's right. You
We're
just said
so
one day
weird.
you're thinking of ice cream, you eat ice cream, and you're thinking, right? And so,
Like, yeah, I'm gonna try this on my cousin. I'm gonna get his blood out.
in between that brain freeze, right? You kind of,
Yeah. That's
but
wild. I didn't know that. Okay.
yeah. And so, like I said, is these companies, they say, okay, we can do this, and we can remove blood components, right? And then just spin it down, and throw away what we don't need, and just give back what we do. Yeah, it's pretty dynamic. Similar thing with the dialysis. It's created the same way. Like, I don't know, I can't think of the corollary, but it's just a filtering process. Dialysis,
Yeah.
you don't remove, how dialysis work. It's just a big filter. You get back the blood, but you remove all the waste. So it functions like a kidney, dialysis. But apheresis, we actually remove a component. So really, apheresis is one of those conditions where, if someone has sickle cell disease, and they're in this sickle cell, condition where they have, one of the sickle cell complications, right? And so we want to remove the sickle cells and then replace it with normal donor blood. In apheresis, we will remove their cells and then replace it with normal donor blood and give back their platelets and plasma. Now, if you have an autoantibody disease, anything that may attack the body, and so we talk about COVID. So there's a situation, they were treating these patients, and actually I saw a couple of procedures early in the year, mostly with my other company in Virginia, where patients with severe COVID, we would do the apheresis procedure on them, where we would move their plasma, because the plasma had I guess you can say, this big inflammation, these inflammatory markers in the plasma. We would remove it from the blood, exchange it for normal plasma. The idea that while we exchange it for normal plasma is that giving someone with normal donor blood is actually more therapeutic. It has healthier proteins and whatnot. And these patients, depending on how sick they are, and if they have any additional comorbidities, they may or may not get better. But we found when I was there that they did get better if they had certain risk factors. We would monitor the certain chemistries and make sure they're trending down. But yeah, it's a sticky situation, when you're trying to treat COVID patients with any modality because you have to consider the other risk factors. Like if they're young, relatively young, they typically fare better, even if they have other comorbidities versus if they're older, and they'll, as far as stratifying their survivability.
Why is that? Is that because, I mean, obviously, as we age, our immune system weakens and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Is that mainly the one of the bigger factors with
Yeah.
COVID? Is that your
Yeah.
body just can't fight it off as well as a younger person?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And so, your immune system, and even when it comes down to the vaccine, meaning like, after we vaccine, the idea is that we expose to this foreign particle and that we mount up an immune response. So if you're young, you'll mount an immune response much quicker, versus when you're older. It may not be as quicker. Let's say it is quicker, but it may not be as robust, meaning like the titers won't be as high. And titers is simply the amount of antibody, in plasma. Then there's the question, people always wonder in the vaccine, if I digress a little bit, that, what about the vaccine? Will it wane away over time? Once you've been exposed to anything, after you've been sick and you develop antibodies, the idea is that you'll have lifelong immunity. 2 years from now, you may have the titers that are significantly lower than it was, 2 years ago, like currently. But the idea is that, at any given time, if you're exposed to COVID again, those cells in the body that produce antibodies will produce antibodies again at a robust rate and I guess you can say in potency, in which which will be more protective.
Right. It's almost like, so maybe this is a terrible example, but when I was in college, I was taking all these math courses and I was passing them and I was doing great. I graduate, I get a real job. I'm not doing any of that stuff anymore, and so over time I kind of forget, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the seeds of how to do certain things is still there.
That's a good analogy.
And then all of a sudden, if somebody says, all right, you know what, you need to study for this test for the next 2 weeks, I'll start to bring back some of those, like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. Oh yeah, and this, and it'll click easier, right?
Yes, that's a great example, man. I like that. I said, okay, that means you're listening.
No,
as I speak to people who are not in the profession, I said, man, am I going too deep? Am I going too, too much? But you sound like you listen, so you got the gist of it. And that's
no, trust me, man. I love all this shit. I considered myself to be one of the dumber human beings on this planet. So the more I listen to people, the more I can pretend to like not be so dumb,
I see. So that's your rationale for the podcast, man. I see. So it's for your benefit. I see you're trying to learn. Okay, that's a good strategy.
Man, I don't want to pay for school anymore, so it's cheaper to just have people on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm thinking like in the ancient Greek world, like the philosophers, they were walking around all day and talk to people, and
Oh man,
like Socrates, he would just like ask people questions.
Oh man, if you could pay me to do that, I'd do it in a heartbeat, man.
Yeah.
Especially lately, like it becomes overwhelming a lot of the times these days, because you'll meet so many people that have certain viewpoints that are just not humane sometimes, and I've found out that lately it's been getting to me a little bit, like I used to just say, whatever, fuck it, who cares, right? But the last couple month and a half, 2 months, it's like, man, every time I hear somebody say something really stupid, it kind of gets to me a little bit.
Yeah. That's the thing I like about you, Pablo. When I met you, first time and we saw, of course, we drinking with the friends and everything like that. I said, oh, this guy's different. I expected, then I realized you told me, your history, you lived in the South too. And, you're very much like me. And as far as how you think, you think pretty rationally about things. You never like to, I think, in my opinion, you don't take things as face value. You go deep, and you discover why you think the way you might think. And so I think, Yeah, you're a deep thinker, so I do appreciate that. And so, like, and that's the way I am too. I don't like to put myself in a box, and I always like to, like to say, why do I believe the what way I believe? After a certain amount of years, and you look back in 5 years from ago, you say, do I still believe what I believe, and why? Otherwise, you just fall into a box. You are fall into a box, and you never want to, never want to do that.
No, yeah, for sure. No, and it's really good. I think it's really good dialogue to have when you meet people that don't really agree with you or have a different viewpoint, because at that point, whether they're learning or not, at least you get to learn a little bit, right? And you might not have something to say at the time, but when you go home and you kind of think about it and digest it, you're like, okay, I think I understand now, and I think this is how you would counter some of those viewpoints, or you might be like, hey, you know what, he's kind of right, like maybe I've been thinking about it a little bit wrong,
Yeah.
or my viewpoint has been a little bit biased.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that there's a rational discourse, right? Because some people get too emotional when even if, like, say they have opposing views, and the argument gets lost, like a true argument or true debate. Let's say not say argument, but like a true
Right,
debate.
right.
If you're passionate, it becomes an argument, and and then of course feelings get riled up. But yeah, if you can have like a rational discourse where it's just like a debate, I think both sides can learn. You know, especially if you come into it without no intention to win. Just to learn.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's the thing that I always try to do, is take myself out of the equation and say, okay, take my experiences out, take my viewpoints out, and just try and go off of facts and other viewpoints, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Now, obviously, it's impossible to do that all the time, right? Because if
Yeah.
somebody says something super ignorant, you can be like, hello,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like I know people that are okay that are, X, Y, and Z. Let's just pretend they hate the color yellow, and anybody who likes the color yellow is just the devil.
Yeah.
I can be like, oh, like I know plenty of people that like the color yellow, and they're not the devil.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like you can't help but do that sometimes.
Yeah.
But no, just try and rationalize things out, and have
And
a
I found out
conversation.
it's easy to ration things out with when you're one on one with someone. Obviously because they're listening to you, they have to rebuttal, say rebuttal. And it's back and forth. But if you have like a group think, or you have two or three people that believe one thing against your belief, it's like almost a losing battle. Especially if it's argumentative. And of course, I don't definitely want to bring politics in, but if you bring something political and, say you're outmatched, you feel like the outcast, like, am I wrong? But I say when there's a smaller group, it's a one-on-one debate, you don't feel like you're wrong. You just feel like there's a true exchange of ideas. That's how I like to debate. Unless it's 2-on-2, it has to be a 1-on-1 ratio. If I'm going against someone, I hate to be outnumbered.
No,
Because
yeah,
even if it's a rational discourse, because it's almost like, who do you have as a backup in your corner?
right, and that's the danger of social media,
Yeah, yeah,
because you
good
can
point.
literally say, "Hey, you know what? The Earth is flat," and you'll see 20 other thousand people say, "Yeah, yeah, 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 Earth is flat," and then all of a sudden, you're like, "Yep, see, there I go. I have literally been proven right that the
Yeah,
Earth is flat
yeah.
because I have all of this support."
What do you call that? The echo chamber or something like that?
Yeah, it's an echo chamber. That's all it is, and I mean that's what it was down south, right? So when Trump was running for president, I would make arguments against him.
Hmm.
And I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there was a fair amount of people who were like, "Nah, you're wrong," and I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." And then I come up here, like to New York, and I'll be like, "Well, yeah, Trump wasn't the best, but at least he did this and this and that." And they'll be like, "Yo, are you a Trump
Yeah,
supporter?
I know
Are you are
that.
are you
Yeah,
one of those? Do we
and,
need to kick your ass?" And I'm like,
that
"Yo,
and
what the fuck?"
that's why I like you, man. Because when you said that, I was like, it was like a breath of fresh air. It's not to say like I'm a Trump supporter and like that. It was like this guy's like he's thinking for himself. He's like he says something, and the fact that because I heard the comment, we were hanging out. I said Trump, guys, Trump. I said, wow, they reacted that way. I said that makes me think that they're not open to listen to things. You know what I mean? It's not to
Right.
say that you're one way or the other, but just to give someone some benefit. Like you say, I'm definitely not espousing Hitler or anything like that. But let's say if you say Hitler, let's just say Hitler made if he said Hitler said something positive, if you said one line about of all the evil things he's done or said, you could say what he said here makes sense. If you said that, would it trigger you? And I think it'll
Right.
trigger. So that's what I'm getting at is that, it's not the person, it's the thing that one thing that they did or one thing that he said. I don't think any human being is inherently evil. They can go down the evil route, where there's like no redemption, but they just don't come out being purely evil. They might have some justification of what they're trying to do, even though it's evil. And so you can say like that line is a period, like from this point to this point, what they said made sense. But in the grand scheme of things, is that's the evil, there's evil biddings, but what they said there, like for example, Trump said something, and I guess, it's ridicule. He said, that I liked. I have to say that I'm not espousing any support for any politics, but
Yeah.
but he said about the cure is worse than disease. When he said that comment, I thought that made sense. And then, but the media like crucified him. And that's when I got this certain view about like the media. Everybody was crucifying him just because he said something. But he made a great point in medicine, and I've heard it before, even before Trump said it. People said the cure can't be worse than disease. Like how you treat the situation, it just can't be. It can't be more than disease itself. Like coronavirus is severe, it's very fatal, very infectious, but we're handling it. But we shouldn't go overboard in what we're doing. And so I think that's what he was trying to say. That's okay. That makes sense. And when they crucified him for making those comments, I was like, wow, that's a little too much, And that's why I kind of have this view of like, you got to start thinking independently about, it doesn't matter if you love your parents, they can be the most godliest people, but if they say something that's a little wrong, just check them for it. Hey, did
Right.
you mean that? Or, if the most evil person says something that's kind of good, just you say, hey, I like that. And, try to save that person, if anything,
Right.
if they're going on the wrong path. That's what I mean by like, like a discourse, a one-on-one discourse. But like I said,
Yeah,
going
there
back to
has to be
social media,
dialogue.
there has to be dialogue. There has to be dialogue in order for peace to be maintained. But if you want to separate, cause civil war, then you definitely want to be in the echo chamber. Like you said about the flat Earth thing. If people don't want to accept that the world is round, they're going to keep saying the Earth is flat. And of course, people are going to react to that, and maybe that's their intention. Is to get those reactions. So
Yeah, usually what I do when I meet, and I hate to say that a lot of these people are ignorant, but there's a lot of examples of ignorance out there. But
mhm.
when you meet someone who is displaying some sort of level of ignorance, I like to just ask them questions.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit here and be like, "Yo, I know the answer and you don't. You're dumb. You suck." I just want to kind of like get to know why they're saying whatever they're saying.
Yeah, that's a Socratic method. That's Socrates. That's philosophy. It's really discovery of like, what does someone know? What do they know about something? Just question what they know and why do they want to know? Because maybe you want to learn. So that's why they say, I think the Oracle Delphi. They said Socrates was the wisest man that she ever knew. The Oracle, right? Because he said he knew nothing. He said
Right.
I don't know anything. He went to the Oracle, said that, and so I thought that was pretty interesting.
No, yeah, and
To be a little
again,
humble and say you don't know anything. You're trying to learn. Like even for me, like if you're even politics, like, and I don't want to go down this route, even though it's like I'm kind of it's like
but let me tell you why Donald Trump's going to win in 2024. Okay, you're going to sit down, you're going to listen.
no, it's to listen. Yes, to listen to people, see why they believe what they believe in. Hey, maybe you're right. Like if you don't completely agree with someone, the opposing view, I want to get to the point where I could be convinced. That's the kind of person I like. I want to be. Where someone
Right,
tells me that's something that I completely disagree with, but I'll listen to them. Um, and they have to listen to me. Like if I listen to them and
right,
says maybe you're right, and then I say my piece. If they say no, you're wrong, you're completely wrong, then you lost me. You almost had me if you can try to understand where I'm coming from. So I mean, I think humans, you say on this podcast is human. We're all human. We know what the right way to go is. We really do. I think most human beings are common sense that we want what's right for everyone, and we want this. We want the opportunity for everyone to be at peace, right? And but like I said, when you have these larger think tanks, social media, you kind of easily dichotomize, what's right and wrong. Like these are the I guess you can these are the good people, these are the bad people. When you have this
Yeah.
groupthink, when you have people kind of, I won't say thinking for you, but when you're and I don't want to say brainwashed either.
No, they just get attached. They get emotionally attached to certain beliefs. And if you say, so if I said like earlier, right, somebody said, oh, yellow's evil, they get beyond attached to that idea. So that if you come up and say, no, yellow is actually not evil, it's just a color, then you have all of a sudden personally offended them, right?
Right.
And then that's where the violence comes, the arguments, the fights, the man. You know what? Everyone that's like Pablo, they can all die because they believe that yellow is just a color.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden they put that online, and all these other people, yeah,
Yeah.
we
Yep.
believe you, and you're right. And so to wrap up,
Sure.
um, in your medical pathology and transfusion medical profession, how much dialogue is there between, I don't know, what is there to disagree on, right? Like, can you give me some examples of maybe there are discussions out there today that, doctors and physicians and everybody else is kind of disagreeing on, like hardcore?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. We talked about COVID, we talked about my profession, what I do, and everything like that. One of the treatment modalities that are I guess you can say, on the market now for COVID patient, severe COVID patient, is the convalescent plasma. I'm pretty sure you heard of that. The blood bank world, we look into the literature to see if it's effective, right? And the literature is very sparse. Let's just say that. And I don't think it's really not that argumentative. I mean, we have I don't want to get
Well, can you clear that up a little bit? The convalescent
so
plasma.
so convalescent plasma is, if you haven't heard of it, is actually a product. As you know, we have different component therapies for patients who have different ailments in the blood bank. So if you're anemic, you get blood, right? If you need plasma for clotting issues, or platelets for clotting issues, you get platelets, right? So we call that component therapy. Um, Convalescent plasma is plasma. However, it's plasma has been donated from individuals who had COVID, right? And they had they're antibody positive, meaning that they have antibodies, natural antibodies to the COVID-19. So the idea is that you collect the plasma, and you give it to someone who has severe COVID, and the theory is that
Oh,
it'll
and it'll
it'll
fight it off.
it'll fight off. So it's a form of passive immunity versus an acquired immunity. So that recipient is too sick to actually develop antibodies themselves, because they're trying to fight it off. And you know how it is over time. Like if a virus or bacteria is attacking you so severely, your body doesn't have a chance to even make antibodies. So you need this kind of temporary measure. And so that's what the convalescent plasma is. So
Huh.
convalescent means just creating antibodies. So it's an antibody. Now this treatment has been done for many years. Like during Ebola, when Ebola happened, they tried this, in the influenza in the beginning, in some stages trial periods, but there has been no robust studies to show that any randomized control trial of any of the like Ebola influenza in the past that has been that effective. I mean, it's been temporizing, and there's theories that is it the convalescent plasma that's helping the patients recover, or is it the just the plasma itself that we're giving? So that's why this is kind of debate between, is it working or is it not, because the studies are not that robust. um,
Right.
all If you walk into any blood bank within the city of New York, you'll find convalescent plasma sitting on the shelf. The physicians, they'll order it because they think it works, and we all we all say it works. It's temporizing, but it has not been FDA approved. It's been FDA authorized, meaning like for emergency purposes, and we've been using it for the past actually past year now. In the United States, it's been procured from the donors, and um, the um, the national blood banks, or they say the blood establishments, have been distributing the products to all the hospitals. Um,
It
you know,
hasn't been fully FDA approved
correct,
for COVID use, or
for
just in
COVID use.
general?
In general, because like I said, we've used it in the past. like for Ebola, influenza. So it's never
Only for
been
emergencies.
only for emergencies. And so the idea, I think that we're going to actually probably wrap it up because there's a lot of different different treatment options for COVID. There's a lot of monoclonal antibodies, that the pharmacies have made. These are kind of um, manipulated, right? In the lab, they created these antibodies that can target COVID, and they have been FDA approved. You can look it up. There's different formulations. However, the convalescent plasma, which has been around longer, within the past year, has not been FDA approved because the studies are not there. The theory is there, is that that they have these. So you know what I mean. So I don't want to say it's hocus pocus, but because especially but it gives credence to the saying that medicine is not a true science. You ever heard of that? Medicine is like an art form. Meaning like
Yeah.
until we get evidence to really robust evidence to say something really works, we just do what we can. It's theorized. It's theorized, and we keep giving it, and because patients, just say patients are getting better, but who's to say that we haven't say if there's some kind of bias in those studies or not, if that makes sense.
Just because there hasn't been enough study, because
No,
you
it's
were
not
saying, right,
studies.
the literature is not robust at all.
Right. It's only been a year, and no one's going to say um, it's not working, because in the beginning, without getting too much into the weeds, if you had COVID, you recovered. You would either be classified in a low titer or high titer, group. Meaning, like, let's say, Pablo, you recovered from COVID, you were in the high titer group, meaning you have these antibodies in high titer. So that means your plasma is better than someone who's recovered but has low titers of antibodies. So both of these products were, given out to patients, but the studies we have now actually prove that high titer is better than the low titer. So currently, what you find in the blood bank is high titer, exclusive high titer for patients who have COVID. But even that high titer, I'm always wondering, like, why did they actually decide the high? It's the theory behind it, right? High titer is better than low titer because they say, if you have a high titer, you can fight the infection better, more
Right.
effectively than low titer. But even those studies don't even support that. Is that high titer doing its job in the first place? So I don't know. I don't know. Let's just say, without getting too confusing here, is that um, no one wants to kind of throw up the flag on convalescent plasma at this time to say, yeah, it's not working, let's stop it. It's probably the best option we have. Meaning, like, when a pharmacy runs out of the monoclonal antibody, or you have no other way to treat, it's just the best measure available at the time. And so that's the controversy, in my field about this product and COVID. Like, is it working? And most in the blood bank, and I don't want to, like I said, I don't know who's listening or not, but because I don't want to say it's not working, but I guess it's not any hidden agenda or anything like that. But I don't think the medical community is as confident as that is working in the way that we thought it would work. But it's the best thing that we have. It's the best thing we have. So I wouldn't say stop it. It's the best thing we
Right.
have, and until we can ease up on it. So because it's not FDA approved, and they should have FDA approved if they really thought it would be a permanent product. Because it's not FDA approved, I think it's gonna eventually get off the blood bank market within the next year.
Well, only time will tell.
Only time will tell.
And that's the crazy thing about everything, right? Is we have these theories and we test them out. And sometimes, yeah, they work out. Sometimes they don't, or sometimes they don't, but there's a reason they don't, right? Maybe we were on the right path, but something's missing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe in 100 years from now, they'll be like, man, they were right there, and they didn't cross the finish line, or
Right.
something, right? I don't know. It's crazy, but
Yeah, yeah, and because the complex of plasma is only a certain dose, and this is my humble opinion. Every COVID patient is different.
yep.
Every COVID patient, they have their age is different. They have different pre-existing conditions or comorbidities, and even giving them passive immunity with convalescent plasma, it could work to some degree, but they have all these other factors that we can't test in the laboratory. So when we given these products, this convalescent plasma, we don't know what's going on. That's the only thing. Like, we don't know how to test if it's effective. I mean, the only thing we can look at is if the inflammation is going down. We can look at inflammatory markers, but that's it. It's not like you give someone drug like chemical X, and you can test chemical X in a lab to see, if it's lower. Next, we need to give another dose, because, like, for example, you give someone vancomycin for an infection, you can actually test the vancomycin, the peaks and troughs, to see when the next dose should be given. There's nothing like that for convalescent plasma per se. You can do that with all the other blood components, like, for example, with red cells. For someone who's anemic, you can check their hemoglobin to see if that red cell bumped their hemoglobin up. That's tried and true method. Same thing with plasma. You can check the coagulation. These are coagulation profiles to see if it's up or down after giving plasma. But with convalescent plasma, you can check to see, if it's still working. Because once, like I said, your high titer, Pablo, let's say if you were infected, you get, let's say we tested in the lab. Okay, you have antibodies. Okay, we'll collect your plasma, then we'll give you to it some recipient. Who's to say that those antibodies that you produced are still working? Right. I mean, we have no way of testing once we give it to you. We do it with good faith that, yes, you have a high titer antibody and is being passively given to someone who has COVID, and hopefully it'll work. That's the theory behind it. And that's why I say it's like, that's why I say it's like hocus pocus, because it's
Right.
like we don't see it. Once it goes in, it's like disappear, and we just pray that it has the effect that we thought it would.
Yeah, it's wild that we have this technology where we can literally go in and pick out stuff out of someone's blood, but at the same time we kind of just give someone some plasma and be like, all right, pray to God.
Yeah, right. And,
like,
that's what
out of our control.
Yeah, I mean, and it's there, right? I mean, we tested these antibodies are there,
right.
So
crazy, man. It's crazy. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Like, this is really fascinating stuff, and I do need to actually, and this is not a joke, I do need to find a doctor. So
yeah,
I'm gonna have to Google internal medicine or internal. What is it? Generic.
Yeah, like you can either a family medicine doctor or internal medicine doctor, or just primary care. Just look at like primary care doctor.
Primary care.
Yeah, aren't you moving soon to closer to my way?
Yeah, I literally just moved here.
Oh, you did?
I'm in LIC now.
Oh, okay. So we definitely got to meet up.
Yeah, where are you at?
I'm I'm by the water. I'm on 48th Street, near Vernon Boulevard and 48th.
Oh yeah. You're off of Vernon.
Yeah, I'm off of Vernon.
Yeah, I'm always taking walks down there. So
yeah, by the water. I'm down by the Gantry Park, I believe that's what it's called. So park is Greenway near the waterway, the ferry.
Yeah. Are you on the East River or on the Astoria? You're on the East River stop, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So 48th Avenue. So I'm definitely not near. I guess you can say I'm about a block up from Astoria. But yeah, we'll link up for sure.
Okay. I know where you're at now. Yep. Yeah, I can definitely walk there, dude.
Yeah, there's a lot of restaurants and everything like that. Yeah, I'm actually about a quarter mile from the Pulaski Bridge.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's up 48 too. So when I go for my runs, I actually, run up 48th and then turn. I think that was on Jackson. I'm off of Jackson, then run up to Pulaski's Bridge and go to Brooklyn. I do that. That's my weekend thing. Go to Brooklyn, cross the bridge and grab some coffee. And
I know exactly what you're talking about because I live off of Jackson. So
okay, all right.
Sure, well, we'll definitely grab a beer soon then.
Yeah, sounds good.
But again, thank you for coming on and kind of explaining to me. I literally had no clue what pathology was before you came on. And no, it's a crazy world that we live in. I'm glad that we live in 2020. What is it, 2021 now?
Yeah, I know. I lost count.
I was about to say 2022, but damn, I'm trying to time travel over here. But yeah, man, again, we'll have to do this again in the future, and we'll grab a beer soon now.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.